everyone and welcome back to the Foreplay channel. I'm Bella.
And I'm Jase.
Today's video is going to be all about Temptation Cruise versus Bliss Cruise and which one is best for you. Before we get started into the video, if you do plan on going on a future lifestyle cruise in the future, if you book through our links, which is at foreplay.com/cruise, it doesn't cost you any extra, but it helps us out a ton. It just helps us be able to continue to make content like this. If we're going to be on that specific cruise as well, we do special little group activities and meetups, and we give out some special swag. And so again, that's foreplay.com/cruise. We would greatly appreciate if you guys would consider using our links whenever booking your future vacations. Now let's get on into the video.
So for today's video, we're going to be specifically talking about both Bliss Cruises, which is going to be every April and every November. And now Temptation Cruise is twice a year, starting in 2025. So you have Temptation Cruise in February and then also Temptation Cruise in November. And in 2025, Temptation and Bliss are actually going to be back-to-back cruises. So if you're going to be like us and go on both, it's going to be a crazy 2 weeks of lifestyle cruises all at once, but we're really looking forward to it.
Since this is a comparison between the two, we're going to keep it a bit more concise. If you are wanting a full detailed review on Bliss Cruise or Temptation Cruise, we will have those videos linked down below. We also do vlogs on all of these cruises too, so you can get an idea of kind of what it's like that way. And if you want even a more in-depth information and review about it on our podcast, we do like a very in-depth, we do story times and all that. And that's at foreplay.com/listen. First, we'll talk about the demographic, and Bliss Cruise is about 45 to 55 with a skew on both sides. So it's kind of like a bell curve. And on Temptation Cruise, it's about 40 to 50 with a skew on each side. So Temptation does tend to skew just a little bit younger. The vibe feels a little bit more young at heart, more party vibes. And then the Bliss Cruise vibe is also party, but you will find that it's a little bit more relaxed over there. Temptation Cruise does allow singles, so you don't have to be like a couple. You can go by yourself or you can go with friends. They also do allow single men as well, so it doesn't matter your relationship type, it doesn't matter who you are. You can book a room on Temptation Cruise, and then Bliss Cruise is only couples, so it's couples only. You can add a third on, but you do have to be a couple to go on Bliss Cruise. For the most part, we feel like Bliss Cruise has a little bit more of the typical lifestyle vibe and the lifestyle demographic. Temptation Cruise also has a lot of lifestyle couples. It also is a very lifestyle vibe, but it's a little bit more diverse.
I'd also say that Bliss Cruise is mostly lifestyle. Like I'd say it's probably 90-95% lifestyle, where I feel like Temptation is probably more that 65 to 70% lifestyle. But on Temptation, people do know it's still kind of that, you know, swinger type cruise. Bliss does label itself as a lifestyle cruise, where Temptation labels itself as an adult spring break. And if you've ever been to Temptation Resort, Temptation Cruise feels completely different. It does feel a lot more lifestyle and not just that really party only vibe. It definitely has a lifestyle vibe to me, just not as much as Bliss.
And we do have a separate video on Temptation Cruise versus Temptation Resort that we will have linked below if you want more information on that and the comparisons between those two.
So next we're going to talk about length. We're going to go as a general rule. Bliss Cruise in April is generally 5 days, sometimes 6, whereas in November it's generally 7 nights and on occasion 6. Temptation Cruise has always been 5 nights in February, and then the Temptation in November of 2025 is also 5 nights. So if it continues on that same theme, it seems like Temptation is always going to be a 5-night cruise. So the size of the ship, obviously this is going to change from year to year. As a general rule, we would say that Bliss, April, and Temptation are generally around the same size. There's those ships that hold around 2,500 to maybe 3,500 people, depending if it's a little bit bigger, whereas Bliss November tends to be on the bigger ships. Sometimes you have it on like Symphony of the Seas, which is what, 6,000 people, but also sometimes in November, Bliss Cruise can be a little bit smaller than that depending on the ship. So you can just check out what year, what ship's going on. We'll link the link down right down here. You can check out how long they are and also what ship it's going to be on, so you can figure out the exact size.
Moving into the playrooms and how the parties and playrooms are organized, they vary quite a bit. Bliss Cruise is very playroom heavy. There's lots of different playrooms. There's usually at least 2 big ones, and then they'll even do some throughout that are more catered towards specific preferences, and that'll be in like smaller conference kind of room areas. Temptation does also have a playroom. Theirs is just quite a bit smaller. There's usually just 1 playroom, and so far whenever we've gone to the playrooms at Temptation, it hasn't had to be completely nude or anything to go in or be in a robe. You can be in your normal clothes or street clothes, and then or your party clothes, and then on Bliss Cruise you do have to change out of what you are wearing. They do have bags and all of that there, so that's a little bit of a difference there too.
I also do think it makes sense because since Temptation is not a lifestyle cruise per se, it makes sense that they have less playrooms, whereas Bliss is a lifestyle cruise. They really focus on those playrooms.
Bliss Cruise also has a dungeon as well, so that has a bit more of a unique twist on a different playroom, and then Temptation doesn't have that.
So as far as the parties go, they definitely have a similar feel with what Bella said earlier. I do feel like Temptation is a little bit more party heavy. In general, whenever you're at a sea day, both are gonna have parties during the daytime. I feel like on Bliss, it's a little bit less party, a little bit more conversation, but they still have music going. You still have those areas where you can get up and dance. People are dancing, people are chilling by the pool. Temptation also has that music. I do feel like more people are dancing. Sometimes they do a little bit more activity type things with the pool parties on Temptation, but they both kind of have a similar feel during the daytime. At night, I would say they're also pretty similar. You're going to have the parties on both of them either out on the deck, like outside, which is pretty nice because it's kind of under the moonlight, which is fun. Then if they're not outside, it's kind of more in the club areas. Sometimes it's one of the really big clubs. Sometimes they have them in the smaller clubs or in both. I do feel like Temptation tends to go longer. I feel like on Bliss, people kind of go to the one main party that there is, or maybe one of the offshoot parties where they have a little bit of, you know, there's like a Latin club or something like that that has a party, and then people go to the main party, and then people kind of head to the playrooms, and then that's kind of the end of the night if you don't go to the buffet. Whereas on Temptation, I feel like people party really hard at that main club, main party, and then people generally go to the after party, which is at another club, and then people go to the solarium, which is another place. And so I feel like on Temptation, since there's not as playroom heavy, the party kind of goes later into the night.
It's also a little bit easier, we feel like, to find people on Temptation Cruise just because there's not as many places you can go to. At least they're not as popular, whereas on the Bliss Cruises, there's just more areas where there are pockets of people. So sometimes it's hard to run into the same people over and over.
An example of that is they have karaoke on Bliss Cruise. And so you're gonna have people that, you know, are at karaoke. And so the party is gonna be split between multiple rooms. Sometimes they have different music in different areas. And so that's what we mean by the party's a little bit more split. And so Temptation is easier to find people because, well, everyone's generally at the one party and then it moves to the next place.
When it comes to theme nights, they're pretty similar. They have some basic themes that are easier to dress up for, and then they'll usually also do themes that have a little bit more of a unique twist to them. People on Bliss Cruise do tend to go all out a bit more than they do on Temptation Cruise, but for the most part, a majority of people are on theme, and all of the themes are usually super fun too.
And I agree with Bella. I do think that Temptation Cruise, not people don't go quite all as out, but I would still say most people are on theme. And I do think that sometimes Temptation does a little bit more unique themes compared to Bliss. I think they both do unique themes, but I feel like sometimes Temptation has a little bit more unique themes.
For example, the one in February 2025, they're doing a naughty Star Wars theme, which is really fun. One time before, they've done like a Midsummer's Night Dream, and then Bliss Cruise will do, well, Bliss usually does have a fetish theme though. One night is usually fetish themed, whereas Temptation doesn't usually have that. Usually they'll have some kind of lingerie theme that people will turn into that, so that's kind of cool on Bliss's part. But overall, they do have really fun themes. It's not like the typical themes that you'd usually see at a lifestyle club. It definitely has a bit more creativity to it.
Except glow. There's always glow on both of them, and that's always the most fun party.
When it comes to food, it is, again, pretty much on par with each other since they're always on a cruise line. Again, depending on which cruise line that it is going to be dependent on what kind of a food is offered. Included with your cabin price or your ticket price, you're going to get like the buffet area and then the main dining room. And then from there, there's going to have different specialty restaurants that you can pay more for to go to. Sometimes there's like a interactive one. Bliss Cruise does have a fetish dinner that you can pay extra for, and that's like not part of the cruise itself. It's part of like Bliss Cruise, the charter cruise, and then Temptation doesn't have that, so that's pretty unique on their part. I will say with cruises, they are very accommodating for any kind of dietary restrictions, especially in like the main dining areas. They're always going to ask you, do you have any? They're very cognizant about that, and I think that's really cool. They do seem to extend the late night buffet since the parties go a lot longer than typical vanilla cruises, so that's really neat on the cruise part. So if you're wanting to know exactly like what food or what restaurants are included, you're just gonna need to look up that specific ship. And in the past, Temptation has been on Celebrity, and now for the upcoming future cruises, they will be on Norwegian Cruise Line, and then Bliss Cruise has been on Royal Caribbean and Celebrity ships. The biggest difference though with the food and beverage kind of thing is Temptation Cruise does include a beverage package, and that includes the alcohol package in your ticket price or in your cabin price, whereas Bliss Cruise, you do have to pay extra for that.
So accommodation wise, they're really pretty similar. It's gonna be that thing of whatever ship it's gonna be on, and Celebrity, Royal, Norwegian, they're all great ships. And so truthfully, it's gonna be pretty even throughout them. I said if you go on something like Symphony, maybe it's newer, so it might be a little bit nicer, but overall, they are all great. The accommodations are basically the same because, well, they're just on cruise ships. And it's also so nice being on the cruise ships because everything just feels so clean. I feel like the cruise staff has so many people that are working that are just constantly cleaning. Like, I mean, you'll walk somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning and someone will be cleaning like a ceiling. Like, I swear they are so clean there. And so that's really nice too, is that they just keep it really nice, sanitary, having people wash their hands. It's just an overall really nice experience. Activity wise, I'm gonna say they're pretty even. They both have a lot of pool games. We noticed Bliss does things like a Mr. and Mrs. Bliss type contest. They do a belly flop contest, just a lot of fun little pool games. They have a famous thing called a car wash, which always gets people really excited. And then Temptation also has a lot of pool games. The one thing we notice that's different is with Temptation, they do have playmakers, and playmakers are people that work for Temptation that come out just to kind of get people involved. They get people up, they get people dancing, get people talking, and a lot of times they kind of run the games. And yes, there is an MC kind of doing the games on Bliss. I feel like the Temptation playmakers kind of get more involved with all of the games, which I feel like really does help. And so I would say that that part of the activity wise for like the pool parties and also dancing at night, Temptation is good because of that. So in addition to like the MCs, like I said, that Bliss has, there is a lot of people that are working for Bliss that are kind of helping with the games. I wouldn't say they're quite as hands-on as the playmakers are, but they're still there getting people involved. And so both have great staff, zero complaints from both. We just feel like with Temptation, playmakers really do help elevate the experience even more so than the people that work on Bliss, but absolutely great on both parts. So one really great thing about Bliss is all of the meetups. Now, yes, most of the meetups are self-led. There is so many different meetups that they do of all different kinds. There's full swap, soft swapper. There's ones that are make a date to go to dinner. There is people who are non-lifestyle. So there's literally so many different meetups that they have. I will say sometimes the meetups are hit and miss. Sometimes they're really, really busy. Sometimes they're not near as crowded, but they are a great place to go just to meet like-minded people that are even more so like-minded, because not just are they on this cruise, they're actually there and talking about, oh, we're soft swap or we're this or whatever it is. And so the meetups are really awesome. They do have meetups on Temptation, just not near as many as they do on Bliss. Both also have seminars where they have people are teaching different classes. Some of these are free, some of them are paid depending on how small the class is, if they're more hands-on, but both do have seminars. I will say Bliss definitely has more seminars. They have a lot that are like an intro to the lifestyle. So maybe if you have no knowledge about it, Bliss has a lot of seminars to really help people that are newer, where Temptation does have the seminars, but I'll just say I feel like Bliss has more seminars overall.
When it comes to shows, they both have comedians, and they'll do an adult kind of comedic show 1 or 2 nights, and then both cruises also have vanilla shows, which is what the cruise line will put on, not the charter, so not Bliss and not Temptation. And those ones are usually a miss of sorts, just because I think people go in expecting it to be more of like a sexy kind of show, and it's just like a normal show, and it's usually some kind of like 80s, or there's usually some kind of theme to it, and most people don't love it. Kind of like a Broadway, but not so Broadway. Bliss Cruise has a Welcome to Bliss show on the very first night. Temptation does do a really fun game show. It's like one of our personal favorite shows that they do. And if you're familiar with vanilla cruises, it's kind of like the Quest, actually, it's exactly like the Quest game show, but it's a lot sexier, and the audience is split into certain teams, and then the playmakers will have people bring things up and do specific things as part of the show. That's super fun. Bliss doesn't do that. Temptation also has erotic, which is a amazing burlesque Cirque du Soleil aerodynamic? No,
I don't know what that's called. Acrobatics?
Acrobatics, not aerodynamics. They do that show, and that is honestly like one of the most incredible shows we've ever seen in general, ever, like not even just lifestyle. So it's really cool that they have that. Bliss Cruise will sometimes also have some sexy shows, but it's not something that always happens. And sometimes Bliss will have a singer. I know one time they did that on the Symphony Cruise, like back in like 21. So it's kind of just dependent on either the ship or just what's going on that year with Bliss Cruise. Temptation so far has had erotic every single year, and they have seemed to do the Quest game show every year now too. Temptation Cruise also has Jen Porter, and she is a singer who plays piano, and she turns music into like sexier music. She'll do parodies and things like that. So if you're used to going to like a piano show on the cruises where you can like request songs, she does that, but it's spicy.
So music wise, I'd have to say they're both pretty similar now. I would say in the past maybe one leaned better than the other, but now I feel like they're really great. I feel like both of them have a really good mix of EDM with top 40. You have the music you can kind of dance to, but they're both just really good overall. Bliss does do nights though where they'll have maybe one of the smaller clubs that is playing a more specific type music. Like I remember there was one time an EDM music, and that room only played EDM for that night, and then the main party played more that top 40 EDM, a mixture of everything. On Bliss, they also have a Latin club. And so while the music is very similar on both of the main parties, Bliss does have a couple more options when it comes to like more niche music at certain smaller clubs. So next, port-wise, honestly, pretty much the same as well. The ports are just gonna be your normal standard ports that you would go to on any of these cruise ships. I will say when it comes to excursion-wise, they also pretty much have the same excursions you would do on a normal cruise, but they normally both do have one adult option that's like a topless optional adult something, and they normally do one of those on both cruises. So if you want to do one of those, they do have it as an option.
Coming around to miscellaneous things, Bliss Cruise is completely clothing optional, so you can be nude, and this is only at specific areas, so only when you are a specific amount away from the port, and then only on the deck area. So the pool deck area, solarium areas, you can be nude if you want to be. A lot of people are topless, a lot of women are topless. There are, I wouldn't say a majority people are nude, but there are a lot of people who are nude. And then on Temptation, it is topless optional only. So you can't be completely nude except for in a specific area. So there would be the playroom, or they usually have the solarium as an area where you can be nude if you want to be. When it comes to pricing, it's all going to depend on what room you get. If you get an interior room all the way up to a suite or a penthouse, however you want to do it. For the most part, Temptation is just going to end up being a bit more budget friendly because it does include the drink package, whereas Bliss, you do have to add that on. But then also with Temptation, if you're not a drinker at all, and then that would kind of even out there depending on what you're kind of wanting from the cruise, because they're so different. For Temptation Cruise, whenever it first gets announced, it'll start off at the lowest price for that, and then as it gets closer to the sale date, they do have price increases, and so as it continues to get closer, it will get more expensive, and so that's just something to keep in mind if you are wanting to go on Temptation Cruise. Booking earlier, you are going to save more money versus Bliss Cruise. They stay the same the entire time whenever it first gets released all the way up until sailing.
Yeah, so if you want to just pause this right now, go to foreplay.com/cruise and book your cruises. The earlier the better. I will also say that Bliss tends to sell out early. Temptation does tend to sell out, but it is normally closer to the sale date, whereas Bliss does tend to sail early. So we would highly recommend, if you are wanting to go on these cruises, booking earlier actually does make a huge difference. For example, November 2024, that cruise booked out 10 months in advance, completely booked out. And so it can be more difficult. So if you're wanting to go on Symphony of the Seas, November 2026, which is one of the huge ships, I would definitely recommend booking now, just because it's going to get busier and busier. And they said they book out fast. So just keep that in mind. ProPlay.com/cruise.
The staff is absolutely incredible on both ships, and that goes for the cruise staff. And that's something that we get asked a lot is, does the cruise staff know what kind of cruise it is? And when we talk about cruise staff, we're talking about like the celebrity staff or the Royal Caribbean staff or the Norwegian staff. So yes, they know what kind of cruise this is. They know that it's a charter. They are allowed to opt out if they want to. Also, the cruise line staff aren't the people who are working the areas that are for the charter. So the playroom areas are not cruise line staff. That's going to be either Temptation staff or Bliss Cruise staff. And then like the seminars, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. So it is like an ethical thing. They're all aware of what they can see and they are okay with that. As far as the charter staff goes, also absolutely amazing. They go above and beyond. We have never had any issues with the staff, and it seems like they do take in the considerations and the recommendations of the guests. They will send out a survey at the end of the cruise, and it does seem like the next year there's always something a little bit different that makes it better. And so that's really nice to know that they take our thoughts and comments and all of that into consideration.
So in conclusion, what is best for you? Both of them. No, it's actually really, really hard to say. I will say that if you're looking specifically for a lifestyle cruise and the playrooms are really big to you, Bliss is probably better. If you're specifically looking for that more party vibe, a little bit younger vibe, Temptation is probably a better bet. But I would say that if you are a lifestyle couple, you are going to have a great time, or even if you're not lifestyle, right? But I'm talking specifically here. If you are a lifestyle couple, some people are like, ooh, should I go to Temptation? Is it lifestyle? Yes, it is in our opinion. Most of you we talk to are lifestyle. So they are both going to be absolutely great options. And if you are completely new, if you've never been to a lifestyle event before, the cruises are still great. We meet so many people on these cruises that have never been to any lifestyle event before, and this is their first event, and say how amazing it is, because there are seminars, you get to meet so many people, you have time to acclimate yourself, and so they're an absolutely great option for really anybody at any level. I said, even if you're just a couple who maybe is a more spicy couple that's not interested in lifestyle at all, they're still gonna both be great. And so we could not more highly recommend both of them. That is why we go on all of them every single year, because they are truly our favorite vacations when it comes to lifestyle vacations. So really can't recommend one more than the other. We would say just do both of them at some point and decide which one you like for yourself, or maybe you're like us and you just absolutely love both of them.
So hopefully this helps you guys with your decision on one or the other. Maybe you just want to try out both, but hopefully this kind of clears some things up for you. And again, if you do plan on going on one of these cruises in the future, if you'll consider booking your vacation using our links, again, completely free to you, helps us out a ton, just helps us be able to continue to make content like this and vlog and all that kind of stuff. And you can get all that information at foreplay.com/cruise.
So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to leave this video a like, subscribe so you never miss me post a video, and then comment down below if you guys have any questions about the cruises, or maybe some comment that will help somebody else. Make sure to drop that down below. We will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.